My own awakening experience, I would later find out, is very much like many others. Many people are having spiritual awakenings, but I was completely not expecting it, and it did completely change my life. And it was instantaneous. It was one of those times a particular person said something, and I went from 35 years of being desperately unhappy to what I would call waking up. And I sort of looked up to the sky and said, "Oh, it took you long enough." And I was at first very incensed that I'd spent 35 years actually believing that all of this was real, or at least that it was the only reality that was here, because an expansive reality came in that was unbelievably amazing. And I understood things. I understood things on a very deep level, things that I didn't have an intellectual understanding of. And I really got that this was a game. And to me, that's an awakening experience. Not all awakening experiences last forever. I mean, I think when people think enlightenment, they're thinking, okay, you became enlightened, you know, like the Buddha, and that was it. You were enlightened from there on out. And generally speaking, I don't think that's true. I think most people have experiences that show them where we're going or what's possible. And then they come back and how do we translate this to this life, this earth, this time? Because you're not particularly useful if you're just enlightened and you can't relate to people. That doesn't help a whole lot. So for me, awakening is a much broader term for real life experience than enlightenment is. Ultimately, it's the same thing. I think it's a matter of duration, perhaps. But once you've had the vision, once you've seen what's possible, you're completely changed. And everything in my life changed as soon as that occurred. Everything changed, my entire perspective. And the beauty of it for me is that there's really never a time when I forget that this is not everything there is. I think once you awaken, you really don't have a choice but to help others awaken. It's like finding the key to the gate that's kept you all inside and saying, wow, I can go outside and you guys have a nice life. It's too exciting. It's too exciting not to want to share that and not to help end the suffering, that living indoors, if you will, or living in the gate. Is you can see the suffering you were in, and so, you know, but I can't say I'm into, you know, proselytizing, or I don't really care if anybody, if they want us to keep suffering, well, of course, feel free, but there's an impetus, there's an urge to help share and to awaken the planet, and I mean, rightly so right now, the planet itself is in pretty dire straits, so some more awake people would be helpful, I think. So that's really behind my interest in sharing this with others, is I'd like to help save the world. And I know I am only one small player among a lot of players who are trying to do that. You know, for me, the beauty of awakening, the beauty of living in a more awakened state is that I have pain like anyone else. I have pain in life. But the suffering is so much less. It's a mood, it's a weather system that passes through, and I know it, and I don't forget. And so I wake up and I'm in a terrible mood, and I don't really know why. Maybe something happened in the world that I wasn't aware of, and I caught the vibe, or maybe there is something going on in my life, but I don't lose the perspective that this is something that will pass, and I don't have to get wallowing in it. I don't go into, oh my gosh, it's going to be like this for the rest of my life and it's never going to get any better. Oh no, what am I going to do? You know, I look at it and I go, yeah, well, sucks being you today. And tomorrow will be better, I'm quite sure, because things change. Most people suffer on a daily basis from pretty much the time they wake up and the time they go to bed. Most people do, that I see out in the world. And they may not be aware they're suffering. They might not identify themselves as, oh, well, I'm suffering right now. And the Buddha said, you know, that life is suffering. But the suffering comes from, am I okay? Am I going to do okay? What'll happen if I'm not okay? What happens if I fail? What happens if I'm wrong? What happens if my family, something happens to them? What happens? Or, I can't believe I just did that. I can't believe this is where I just went. I'm going to be in such trouble. Whatever that conversation is that's going on, that's not the real you. That's a surface you that lives out your life. And you can keep living there, you know, if you want to. But I didn't want to anymore. I wanted to live from a different place. I wanted to be able to listen to the conversation, to listen to the little 2-year-old having a tantrum in my brain and go, chill. You'll be all right. Don't worry about it. This is, you know, a solution will arise. And that's another thing for me with awakening, is realizing that there's an enormous amount of support out there in the universe. It's not a scary, horrible, terrible place that you have to be afraid of. It's an expansive place of possibilities. And I can live in those possibilities, and I attract possibilities to myself. And that may sound very airy-fairy, but try it. See if you don't attract something different by playing at that level of the game.